We are now going to review considerations for designing a public service program. These considerations include how to maintain compliance with spending rules, how to design your program for effective implementation, and how to ensure that you are addressing the defined need. As mentioned in the previous section, there are spending rules that each grantee must abide by. These rules differ for entitlement grantees and states, and there are some exceptions. Let's walk through these in detail. Entitlement grantees cannot obligate more than 15% of the annual grant allocation plus 15% of program income received during the prior program year. State spending limits are based on the total amount of CDBG funds expended by units of general local government for public service activities and must not exceed 15% of the state's yearly allocation of funds plus 15% of program income received during the current program year. The spending cap applies to the entire state allocation, not to the amount of funds allocated by the state to any one unit of general local government, known as an UGLOG. It is a state's responsibility to ensure that its overall allocation is within the cap. Let's pause for a minute to walk through some examples. Suppose an entitlement grantee receives $1 million in CDBG funds each year and received $20,000 in program income in the prior year. The grantee could obligate 15% of the sum of $1 million plus $20,000 for public services activities. Suppose a state grantee receives $15 million in CDBG funds each year and received $300,000 in program income the current year. The state could expend 15% of the sum of $15 million plus $300,000 for public services. In terms of spending, also keep in mind spending rules about funding over multiple years. Sometimes grantees will want to fund a public service for multiple years from one CDBG allocation. A grantee might award $50,000 over 2 years, but fund the activity at $30,000 the first year. In that case, the obligation would show as $50,000, and the grantee would have $20,000 in funds from prior years, or unliquidated obligations. The grantee will need to factor in unliquidated obligations when determining whether or not it has complied with the public service cap. Now that we've explained the cap, you should know that there are some activities that are not subject to the 15% cap. These include general support services provided to micro-enterprises, some home ownership assistance programs, and economic development services carried out in connection with special economic development activities. For entitlement grantees, these also include employment support services carried out by community-based development organizations, and for states, qualified nonprofit development organizations, which are part of larger projects designed to increase economic opportunities. Refer to the CDBG Entitlement Guide and basically CDBG for states for more information. As you work through the design of your program, remember the process is integrative. Be sure to make adjustments to your design as you learn more about what may work and what impacts you can reasonably expect to achieve. Key elements in the program design process include 4 C's. 1. Characterize the type of public service needed in your community. 2. Consult with key players. 3. Assess capacity to have a positive impact. And 4. Identify costs and ways to cover them. Let's talk about the first C. You will want to characterize the public service need that you are trying to address through analyzing data. You can do this by reviewing prior plans and studies and updating any previously collected data to understand current trends. Some of the first places to look for documented need are in the Consolidated Plan, Annual Action Plans, Comprehensive Plans, and other plans, such as those to address homelessness. These plans are available at both the state and local jurisdictional levels. These planning documents, by design, define community needs and detail the public engagement and data analysis processes that help to identify the need. The following data sources can help you analyze and update data. Census ACS. State and federal government websites like Labor, Public Health, Elder Affairs. Point-in-time homeless counts. A community's anti-poverty strategy. surveys and waiting lists from existing programs, annual reports and websites of provider agencies and foundations. Not all data is reliable. Make sure the data that you use to justify and build your program is from a trusted, recognized source. The second C is to consult. You will want to consult with those who know about the nature and extent of the need firsthand. Grantees will want to ensure they are filling needed gaps in public services and not duplicating efforts. Talk to beneficiaries, the community, and stakeholders. Some ways to do this are to conduct surveys and focus groups, to hold regular check-in meetings with partners, and to talk regularly with other municipal departments. Include the following stakeholders in your discussions: existing partners, non-profit service organizations, schools and universities, hospitals and health centers, faith-based organizations, and other governmental entities. As much as possible, learn from prior beneficiaries and use their feedback to inform program design. Include potential beneficiaries in the planning process and look for opportunities to learn from others' experiences in the community, especially when there are shared concerns and goals. The third C is to assess capacity. Make sure you have capacity so that your activities have positive impacts. To do so, evaluate past performance. Look at what you've been able to achieve in the past. Who are your strong partners? Why are they successful? Measure your results and evaluate them. The information you gather on existing programs can help you identify which approaches work well in your community and which do not. Maximize impact. You will want to fund and work with organizations that have strong capacity to implement programs and have a proven track record. Make sure you design your program to capitalize on their strengths and help others learn from their successes. Calculate return on investment, both on an individual activity level and an overall program level. You want to make sure that you are getting the best return on your investment. This means taking a second look at activities that have very high administrative costs for little results. It may also mean doing what you can to achieve economies of scale, funding fewer organizations at higher levels than several at lower amounts. The fourth and final C is cost. You will need to identify the costs of the service and resources to cover them. Factors to consider include cost to deliver services, total budget to address need, other resources available. Let's take a quick look at each of these. Cost to deliver services. Public services activities have a range of costs. Sometimes a little bit of money can go a long way, and other times the cost to deliver services exceed the direct benefit to the client. For example, a home heating assistance program that provides one-time emergency payments could assist a lot of people with a low household benefit cost. However, that same program may be cost-heavy on the administrative and delivery side. Through program design, there can be different ways to achieve cost savings. One may be to qualify individuals for more than one program at a time, and another may be to group activities in a few agencies, rather than have each agency offer its own complement of services. Total budget to address need. Like other CDBG-funded activities, with public services there is the question of how much to spend on a particular activity and how far those funds will go toward addressing community need. This is usually a tough question to answer, and most communities never have enough funds. Unlike other activities, the public service spending cap limits what grantees can spend on public services, which helps put parameters on spending. Other resources available. As with other CDBG activities, leveraging resources is essential. Many public services activities have high administration and delivery costs and yield better results when combined with other activities. For example, combining home heating assistance with weatherization activities can help meet both the immediate and long-term needs of the household assisted. Note: CDBG rules allow grantees to charge nominal fees for the provision of services. After designing your program, it is essential to set up systems that will enable you to measure results and evaluate performance. There are many ways to do this, and it is important for grantees to know what they seek to accomplish prior to implementing programs. It is also essential for grantees to know what will need to be reported in IDIS and the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, or Performance and Evaluation Report. Some of the things you will want to measure are proportion of grant funds allocated to public services activities, amount of other funds leveraged, number and characteristics of people assisted, indirect benefits to people beyond those receiving direct assistance, and organizational capacity developed. Be sure to design your program operations so you collect the information you need to measure results. Identify specific data to be collected during implementation. Determine what you need to collect at intake, for example, beneficiaries' age, disability, race, and income status, and what to collect during and post-implementation, for example, spending rates, number of people assisted, and client satisfaction levels, as well as tangible results, such as number of employed clients, and their salaries, benefits, and duration of employment. One way to collect this information is to conduct exit interviews with them. This information can be vital to improve future programs. Let's look at an example to see how state grantees use CDBG funds to respond to job training needs. This particular state lost more than 7,000 manufacturing jobs over a 5-year period as the state's economy shifted away from manufacturing to support the high-tech and healthcare industries. As the economy transitioned, unfortunately, many of the people who had lost their manufacturing jobs could not find work in the rising industries due to a mismatch in skills. After several failed attempts to solicit new manufacturers, the state accepted that its economy had shifted permanently. Later, when the state held public meetings for its 5-year consolidated plan, residents complained that the state and local governments were not doing anything to help them find good-paying jobs, and that they were increasingly unable to pay their bills and support their families. As a result, the state set aside $5 million in its CDBG method of distribution to fund job training programs. The state would publish a notice of funding availability for application by UGLUGs that form partnerships with local agencies to provide job training and skill development programs. In applying for funds, local government staff needed to make sure that they had a good understanding of the need and how it played out in their community. Since many people had approached the local governments for help with finding new jobs, staff were already well aware that there was a high demand for job training programs. They further consulted with local and regional agencies to learn more about specific needs and the costs of running programs. Once awarded funds by the state, the local CDBG staff issued a request for proposals to job training service providers. As part of the request, applicants were asked to demonstrate that residents in their service area had been significantly impacted by the loss of manufacturing jobs and to describe how their program would complement other local and regional services. Furthermore, applicants had to show a proven track record in running similar programs and demonstrate how they could operate their program cost-effectively. During implementation, many UGLUGs further built their capacity and ensured the job training programs were producing results and operating cost-effectively by holding quarterly meetings to discuss their progress, troubleshoot challenges, and assess costs. This enabled them to evaluate the impacts of their programs on an ongoing basis and make needed adjustments to increase the number of job placements. By working to evaluate the effectiveness of the programs during implementation and making necessary modifications to the program design, the UGLUGs ensured their success. By the end of the first program year, the state was happy to report that over 800 displaced workers had been hired in new positions through the UGLUGs programs. Thanks for watching. Click the video thumbnails below to learn more about how to use CDBG for public service activities.